So the use of MBIs in Indigenous lands in North Australia has been very limited to date. Do you have an opinion on what environmental issues and what types of MBIs have the greatest potential in Indigenous lands?
At the moment, I would say that the general interest for MBIs has been quite low because there's not enough information out there that's relevant for Indigenous land managers on MBIs. But for the environmental aspects, I would definitely say that there's areas like biodiversity and vegetation management where the MBI tools could be used and may prove to be effective, but at this stage that needs to be investigated further. It would require more training and more support to see if there is any benefits of using MBI tools. Also, especially in developing metrics that look at aspects such as Indigenous knowledge and how that's incorporated into land management, and that's evaluated, because currently it's not evaluated as well as it should be, and I think there's a number of benefits within land management that aren't evaluated as well as they should be, non-market benefits. And other areas, the obvious ones as well, is carbon, just because of the general demand at the moment, and there's because of the large areas of land that are Indigenous owned, that there's definitely potential there for carbon, selling off carbon credits, but to do this well, it may be a market-based instrument tool would give Indigenous landholders a better market advantage, especially in areas where a number of groups may put in for a bid together to get better value for money, especially in aspects where there may be more support for funding to support Indigenous land managers like ranger groups and things. Also a very important area is water. Especially the demand for water is so high. I think MBI tools could be used for possibly to look into the allocation of water, and there's, especially on Indigenous lands, and for Indigenous people to have the opportunity to have a bit more control of the market of the water, especially in areas where there's these misconceptions that there's copious amounts of water in the Northern Territory, endless supplies, which is sometimes a bit misleading, and possibly market-based instruments may be able to clarify some of that and give the control back to Indigenous landholders.
Yeah, the specific challenges in developing the capacity to design and implement MBI in Indigenous land.
The challenges for the capacity would there has to be people have to be interested. There has to be a need for the market-based instruments. They have to be relevant to Indigenous land management. Otherwise, if there's no interest, they won't work. And also that for them to work, they have to have the input from landholders and from Indigenous land managers. So yeah, it has to be relevant. And the capacity also depends very much on how the information is presented to people, with how it's relevant, how the information is presented, but also the people that are presenting it, making sure that the people that are involved with developing the MBIs also can work with people. I think something was mentioned earlier about the importance of working together and that level of trust, and I think that is definitely an issue for Indigenous land managers, to make sure that there's a level of trust there, so that when market-based instrument tools are developed, that they are developed with people that can work well with Indigenous land managers. There is potential there for organisations such as NAILSMA to possibly be a broker between the groups and the people that are designing the MBI tools.